Hey guys, and welcome back to another Unfiltered Gamer board game review, and today's game up on the tabletop is Temple of Horrors by GeoChicks. This is a 1 to 4 player game, takes roughly 90 minutes to probably 120 minutes to play, ages 14 and up. And this is a adventure dungeon crawl game with a unique dexterity mechanic when it comes to combat. Basically, the game is going to be played in rounds, and at the end of every round, you're going to progress to the next round of play, attempting to complete a mission. And there are a multitude of different missions. In fact, the game comes with an entire adventure booklet for you to choose, as well as an entire scenario section, and if you'd like, a full campaign. And you're basically going to just try and complete that. There are modules to the game that will include a trader element, and of course there's a plethora of unique minions you'll be fighting throughout the game. On your turn, you will use an action cube to take an action. Mostly it's going to be exploring, and you're going to explore new locations throughout the dungeon. The dungeon is going to have an access of unique tiles you'll be placing down, and then you'll be attempting to either dodge traps or fight enemies or obtain some unique treasure as you go throughout the game. Progress throughout the mission and escape, and of course if you can, kill the traitor or stop them from completing their mission, and of course if you're the traitor, do the exact opposite. Complete your mission and mess with the players as much as possible. We'll talk about the setup for the game, Temple of Horrors, a very light playthrough explanation of how it works, and then of course my review. We did a playthrough of this game on our live stream. There were some errors that we made, so I took a full day and went through it and learned all the rules online as well as this, and came to a conclusion as to how the game plays for the most part. And so we'll cover that and I'll give you all the details. But of course, the playthrough is pretty close to how the game is played. Setup for the game Temple of Horrors is complex, but I'm going to break it down for you as simple as possible. First, you'll choose a character, whether it be a cleric, mage, ranger, barbarian, rogue, etc., etc. Take that character and that character's deck. The character's card should have a number of details, whether it be their HP and how many minions they can deal with, and whether they're ranged or melee. And then that character's deck is going to have the abilities of the character. Shuffle them, but make sure the cheaper costs on the top left, it's always going to be the number 2, are going to be placed on top facing forward, and that your red star ability is separate. That's the card you start with as a bonus ability, and the red star that is outlined with the number 2 in it is your first ability in the deck. The rest of the cards are face up, obviously, but you can flip them during the game to increase their power. Your player board is going to have its color, which is going to symbolize your character color throughout the game, and it's going to have a number of things. It's going to have your HP, which is found on your character card, and it's going to have stats, whether it be movement, actions, defense, HP, how much damage you can deal, etc., etc., bonuses that you can do for damage and dodging. You're going to start with 3 stat points. Basically tick up these little bricks here, these little cubes, up 3 in any order that you choose. And remember that the numbers don't really mean anything. It's only when you hit the symbols that you get the bonus. After that, you're then going to take a number of cubes. You'll take 5 cubes for what you're going to be using throughout the game. This is your supply. And you're going to take 3 cubes, which you're not going to use to begin with, and they're going to go in your reserve, which is going to be on your character card. You're also going to take mana cubes that are not of your color, they're just white, and you'll get 8 of them. You'll take some money, 4 to be specific, and you'll take a free bonus movement as well. It's a little circular disc of your color. You're also going to take a combat board. This you'll have to set up after you get the game. It's going to come with little walls, and it's going to come with a kind of way in which you're going to be throwing cubes on this board here to deal damage and to use to roll for defense. And that's pretty much it. For each character, you're going to do that, and you're also then going to gain a player aid. When it comes to the main game itself, what you're going to do is you're going to draw a map card most of the time, and you're going to follow the adventure that you choose in the adventure book. The adventure book has a large variety of different adventures that you can choose, and all of them are going to tell you to basically draw a map and then use portions or all of that map to create your game board. The first mission, that's not a tutorial, is pretty simple. It basically says draw a map. It says to place the entrance and your characters on that entrance, little standees, and you're also going to be placing a treasure area and a minion area and a number of minions equal to the number of players on the minion area. Defeat the minions, gain the key, defeat the minions, gain the key, then you'll get to unlock the treasure, and then you leave back through the entrance. Take a number of cubes for each player of that player's color, a red cube and also a black cube, and put them aside. Those are your initiative. That's how you'll determine turn order and what you can do on your turn. Take the main game board out, take the big red cube and place it on the far left top green space. That is your round tracker. You start at 1, but you can go all the way down to 18. There's a number of bonus objectives you can complete throughout the game, and there's a track underneath that for taking damage when it comes to enemies. There is your deck of cards for actions, or for items, I should say. You'll shuffle these guys all up, deal out a number 5, and as well as a bonus one, card number 69, which will reference, nice, but also reference the different types of walls and barriers that you can gain throughout the game. You're going to put one of each of those tokens on this card, and you'll refresh this from time to time so that you'll gain them back. But they're typically going to be like tunnels and blockades and whatnot that sit next to the items. So they never get, the card never gets bought, it's just the tokens that you can buy for the cost. There's also a number of tiles in the game. You'll shuffle these decks of tiles up, deal out 8 of them, place them in the reserve area so you can pick them as you go from room to room. All the extra stuff are going to be like money, they're going to be like experience points, tiles and tokens that you might gain throughout the game, as well as all of your minions. I just suggest you place them all as close to their color as possible. All the red minions with the red minions, and yellow with the yellow, etc., etc., and all the coins with the coins, and bonus things that you'll be gaining throughout the game. You will use some, you won't use some. It really just depends on what scenario that you're playing with. I have a number of just items here that I may never come across, but they're going to be here just in case for the specific game mode. And then, from there, you're basically ready to begin the game, Temple of Horrors. The setup is pretty straightforward. There's a lot to it, and there's a lot of gameplay here, but it's not super complex when it comes to just how the game is set up. The game is played in rounds, and the game has 5 phases for every round. And on your character sheet, or your player aid sheet, it will tell you the game phases in the top right-hand corner. The first thing that you do is the hour start. It's where you begin by moving this marker from one space to the next across the top right-hand side of the game board, basically increasing the difficulty of the game as you progress, whether it be for traps or for monsters. It really just depends on what you're fighting at the time. And then you get into initiative. Initiative is a cool, unique action or aspect to the game that I haven't seen before. You take all these little cubes I explained, one for each player, the minions, and of course the melee action phase, and you roll them. And then based from north to south, you will arrange them so that they give you an initiative order. Your tile for the entrance will dictate which way north is, and in this case it's going to be over here. So it would be blue's turn, then it would be orange, then there's a combat for melee, if there is one. Yellow's turn, minions will move if they exist, and then green. And that's what you'll do for every initiative phase. Take these, roll them, and then issue them based on where they land as close as possible. A little janky in some ways, but also cool. And place it off to the side for when you get into the next phase, which is the action phase. During the action phase, you can take any main action. Only one of them, and they typically are going to use an action cube. And you start with 5 action cubes. You also start with 8 mana. And what you're going to do is usually explore. You're going to take a cube, place that cube in the space that you are in. You'll obviously check initiative first. Okay, there's no black, so blue's going to go first. Blue will begin taking one cube, not from their character card, but from their actual supply. So reserve is different than supply. Reserve is the stuff that you can't use until the end of the round. You can get some back. The supply is the things you have access to. You'll take this, place it on your character in its location, and then you can take the action to explore. You'll move to the next location, you'll take the next piece tile and set it onto the board here face up, refilling the supply of tiles, and thusly opening up a new way. Some of these tiles will trigger traps. Maybe they might spawn minions. Maybe they might heal your party. There's a variety of tiles that do different things, and sometimes they'll involve taking a check. And typically, a check will involve the number of different things. But you'll be basically discarding the top card of the main item deck. Then you'll be drawing a number of tiles equal to the difficulty, and of course the how long you've been playing the game. It'll say 1, 2, 3, or 4 cards, and you'll be checking the back. If it hits a trap, and you have a trap, you'll have to deal with that. If it's a monster, and you have to spawn monsters, you'll spawn monsters. And if you don't draw any of them, you're just going to discard them. And so that's how you kind of interact with tiles. Sometimes you might have to actually use an action to interact with them. It just really depends on the tiles. There's a number of them, and you can look in the rules for how they all work. But that's primarily what you're going to be doing, is exploring. There are other actions that you can do, like you can search the tile that you're in by doing the typical thing as well, drawing these tiles, these cards here, and revealing items and choosing an item. You can find secret passages. You can use a ranged attack if your character is able to. Use any powers that you might have, like magic missiles for your mage. Activate any rooms that are available to you that say, oh, activate this room to heal your party, or open a breach, or make some noise so that monsters will hear you and kind of move in your general direction. And you'll be able to do any of those main actions, but only once per turn, and you'll have a number of turns in a round. Your free actions are free movement. You'll be able to take your little yellow disc and you can place it on your character when it's your turn, and on my mage, and you can just simply move your character as a free action. It's not included with your main action, so you can do any free actions that you want on your turn, or simply not use them. It's really up to you. You can buy items in the item supply area here. The cost is in the top left, and what they do is in the bottom. You can use your items. Typically, they'll have a cost to them, or require you to turn them or discard them. You can exchange things with players next to you. You can interact with certain things like a key or a door, and then of course, you can use any special abilities that you might have. And so those are all the main free actions that you can take along with your one main action. So place a cube out, do your action, and pass, and go through initiative order. And you will do that consistently throughout the game. Now there's a few exceptions, and the main exceptions that are the most confusing are the black cube and the red cube. The black cube basically is going to move all minions that are not currently in melee combat with characters. And they will move them based on sound, they will move them based on their movement speed and whether they can see the characters, and a variety of different things that the minions were going to take into consideration when it comes to movement. But typically speaking, if they see you, they'll move a number of spaces, and if they get into their tile, they will engage in melee combat with you. The red cube is where you initiate melee combat. If you're already in melee combat when the round begins, or basically, if you ever have minions with you and it's your turn, you don't actually get to take your turn. You're going to be taking your turn as a melee combat. If you don't have minions when it's your turn in your space, you can take your action, and if you happen to go into a space with minions and then the red cube comes out next, then you're going to have to engage in melee combat. So it's technically possible for you to take two actions in a singular round. So like in this case here, if I had minions and they were to move and they moved into, I don't know, let's just say that they moved into black's space, or not black space, sorry, we'll just say the archer, the green player's space. So now you've got a minion there. Well, green is only going to get to do their melee phase, right? But blue is up next, and blue's not currently in combat. So on blue's turn, they can simply move into combat, they can spend their cube, and now the next phase is melee. So now the hunter and the warrior would take combat for melee and fight against that little minion here. And you'll go through the whole round, and that is basically how it works. After you go through all of these, you will then rinse and repeat. As long as you A, have cubes and still want to use them and decide not to pass, and B, you're not in melee combat. If you're in melee combat, you'll progress even if you don't have action cubes. You have to pay life in order to gain cubes back so you can utilize them to fight. And I'll talk about fighting in a little bit here. After you've done all your action rounds or chosen to pass, you'll go on to the encounters step. Encounters is also another check. Most checks are using this item deck where you'll draw a number of cards after discarding the top card, and then you'll check to see if you find enemies. And if you do, you will take that, you'll discard all the cards that you used to check. You'll take the enemy card, look at the enemy card, north 3. That's where the enemies spawn, north 3 of the location. So you'll take 3 spaces north, and you'll place down enemies in that location with a tile from the reserve, and players will get to choose which tile. And enemies will have a certain ability to see between blank tile spaces, but I think it's only 1. And that is how encounters work. Obviously, you'll be placing more minions out the more you see the same type of enemy. So the first time you see yellow, you'll place 4 out for 4 players. The second time you'll place out 4, and you'll place out like an elite. And then the third time you'll place out 4 enemies, an elite, and a leader. And eventually you'll even come to bosses in the game as well. There's a number of bosses that you might be fighting in the game, like a siren or a dragon, etc., etc. And so enemies get progressively more difficult as the game goes on, and the more you meet of the same type of enemy. After the encounters are over, you'll go to the Hour's End phase. The Hour's End phase is basically going to allow you to recover your elements from the map. You'll move 3 of your colored elements from the reserve to your stock. It's a way to refresh your actions. And if you don't want to use the colored elements, you can use the white elements instead at a value of double. And you're going to reactivate any cards that you've turned over and remove any barriers or illusionary walls from the table. And you'll rinse and repeat. You'll move the marker to the right with the initiative, with the hour start. You'll start with your initiative by rolling these guys here. And then you're going to progress with your initiative up until you deal with the hour's end once again and try and complete the mission for the game. And that's it. That's how the game works. The last thing I really described to you is combat, a unique feature that has a lot to do with dexterity. How combat works basically is you'll have a number of these little white mana cubes that you can utilize that are in your supply off of your character card, and you'll just roll them onto your game board. If you hit the X, that's a womp womp, and that means you lose 2 to a specific stat that you roll at the end of combat. If you hit the black one, that's a very powerful attack. Red is a decently powerful crit, and then you have orange, yellow, and green, where green and yellow are dodge, and the orange is simply one singular damage. The main rule is you can't basically flick or throw cubes past this line here, and you can choose to flick or throw. Any number of cubes on the black are fine, but if you have more than one cube that's touching the red, you lose all of them, and they all go to your reserve. And so any ones that are in the womp womp space, the blue space, will go to your reserve as well. So you want to avoid doing that. You want them to come back to you after you've utilized them so you don't lose them and have to bring them back as opposed to action markers. And that's basically the idea of combat. You can roll any number of mana that you'd like, but remember, the more you roll doesn't necessarily mean the more damage you're going to deal, because that red space can hinder you as opposed to help you at certain aspects of the game. And you'll chuck these out, you'll do damage to the enemies, and the enemies will be able to do damage back to you, and it's based on their stats as they're on their character sheet. This thing here tells you right here, your creature stats on here. If you're fighting against a specter, it has 5 health, it does 2 damage, and it can hear 3 spaces away, and its bonus is it can move an extra space when it comes to movement. And you have to do all damage to that creature in a round. You just simply can't, its health doesn't stay on them. There's no health cubes. It's either you do 5 damage to it, or it's going to stick around when you refresh, and once again it's going to start again. And they can defeat you by dropping you to 0 health. There's a few rules in the game that prevent you from just losing outright or being removed from the game, such as if you're in the yellow or green area, when you die, you can have a respawn, but when it gets to later in the game, you're simply out, and if you're not able to complete your goal. Objective of the game is simple, like I said, complete your objective and get out, or whatever that specific scenario is. If you're playing with the trader element, there's a specific trader objective that they can complete, and they're kind of like a secret trader. You don't know who they are and whether they're going to attack you or just try and go for a specific thing and fumble you along the way. Play that or not, cooperative, competitive, or single player, it's up to you in the game Temple of Horrors. That's the basic idea of how to play. There's quite a bit more to the game, but I think you get the general gist of it. Temple of Horrors is a game you've probably felt like you've played before. It's a dungeon crawl for the most part. It has tile placement, it has action management, and it has experience that you gain when defeating groups of monsters. It has ways for you to gain equipment, or items I should say. It has unique aspects to each different specific campaign or scenario, and each character has their own unique character deck of spells and abilities that you can utilize as well as upgrade. You've also got a skill tree that involves movement, it involves actions, it involves mana, it involves doing more additional damage or gaining more dodge, and of course gaining more HP. And along the way you're going to be spending experience to do so. You'll gain experience and utilize it for upgrading your abilities, to gaining a teleport with the mage, or heavy wounds, or maybe you're going to have burning hands, and then maybe you want to upgrade your teleport and you can spend that in order to give yourself a stronger teleport if you'd like. And it's really up to you. You kind of customize your character. Anytime you play the game with a character specifically, even if it's the same one, you might get different abilities that you can unlock throughout the game. Choosing which to unlock is, when it comes to your abilities and your skill tree, is really up to you, and just provides you with benefits. And of course, avoiding damage and doing as much damage as you possibly can with your dexterity board is going to be an integral part of the game. And this is obviously very different when it comes to a lot of other dungeon crawls. There are some dungeon crawls like Catacombs that have a unique dexterity element to it, but in this case, about 90% of the game is literally about action management, resource control or usage, and then this 10% is where it comes with combat and how you're choosing to roll your dice and how you're choosing to be reserved when it comes to using your dice. And obviously don't forget, not dice, your little cubes. And don't forget that you can keep track of HP for each enemy using this bottom portion of the main game board. It's very important that you do so, and while they don't reset health instantly, they do at the end of the round. So if you and an opponent and another player can work together to defeat an enemy in the same round, that's a way you can get rid of them. Cubes is the primary method in which you're going to be advancing in the game, and utilizing them for actions as well as utilizing your mana cubes for combat damage is important. How you choose to spend them and send them to your reserve is important as well, and noting the case that you need to be careful with how much you extend yourself, how much resources you use to gain new abilities, and there's a variety of things that you can utilize in the game when it comes to different items, as well as, of course, the unique trap system, which I've seen in other games before, but I don't think I've seen it in a dungeon crawl before, where you draw cards from the top of the deck and see what happens to you based on whatever the top symbol is. It's a good method of using the same element, like item cards, for instance, as also a check system. There's games I've played that are similar to that, but this one does it in kind of a unique way, and I like the idea of discarding the top card and kind of revealing to see what happens in the game. There's elements in combat where you have to, the original prototype I saw online had like descriptions of combat, and I wish it kind of still said it here. It might say it somewhere on this board here, but there's a whole bunch of text on this thing here. I like the stats and the actions and game phases. The rest of it, there's just a whole bunch of things you can do, and I wish it just stated it on here. Can only have one on red, for instance. What happens when you hit a whiff? Those would be nice little additions to the combat, because it kind of wants you to be careful with how you initiate combat. You're not just chucking all your mana in and trying to get as much damage as possible, because in reality you'll probably just lose most of your cubes as opposed to gaining value. And so you have to take that into consideration, as well as how much you choose to use your resources to buy certain items and when they're going to come necessary, as opposed to your stats, and et cetera, et cetera. And there's a lot of different little choices like that. Each character feels different. It acts different, it has its own unique deck. I like that aspect to the game. It has some great artwork when it comes to the character design and how they function together. It works, it flows. Love the bonus little objectives that you can gain throughout the game, which will give you experience. Defeating all yellow minions will give you experience points, or defeating all of this type of minion will give you 2 experience points. How you make your grid will give you bonus points, and there's ways in which you can gain more experience throughout the game, but not just completing the main objective of the game, which kind of gives a more intricate aspect to dungeon building. You're maybe not going to just simply move across the game map, do the thing, and go back, because you'd like to gain experience, maybe especially when you're doing a campaign mode. But the longer you stay in the game, the farther this track goes, the more dangerous the traps and minions become as you progress. There's also spaces on the game board that will refresh all the items, so you can get new items in the game board. A nice additional aspect I love when it comes to games with shops. I can't stand a shop that's got dead items. Nobody wants them and they just sit there and you can't refresh them. You have to take them and you're stuck with them. This does away with that aspect to some of the games I really detest when it comes to that aspect. This is kind of a unique thing that I think all games should do from now on. I love the idea of adding unique little tiles to the board that will let you dig through specific empty blocked doors or teleport, etc., etc. These tools that you can utilize to kind of craft the dungeon to your will. So it feels kind of like a TTRPG in that way. And of course, I do enjoy the combat aspect of the game, and even the initiative system is a fun, unique method. Overall, it's got a lot of cool aspects to it. I love the stylization of the tiling, I love the story aspect, and the fact that there's a large variety of different options when it comes to each quest that you can partake in, different types of minions and bosses that you'll eventually get to fight, and there are some challenging ones in there, and of course, party composition making a difference as opposed to not. There's also as far as I'm aware, an upgraded version of the game that comes with like walls and doors that you can attach to the tiles, as well as miniatures. That would add even more life to this game. I love that aspect. Tile games with like Descent type vibes. I really want minis. Most games I don't need minis, but games like this I like to have them. It kind of adds more to the style of the game and theme of the game. The base game, while it doesn't come with that, comes with everything else and is high quality and nice. It feels good playing this game. Okay, so negatives. The rulebook is really challenging. Understanding how melee combat worked was confusing. If you saw our playthrough, or even some of our playthrough, Mind the Demons at the very beginning of the video, our audio went kind of nutty. The combat system is pretty straightforward, but because there's so much convoluity in the rules, it was challenging for me and my wife to kind of grasp how combat worked. And it's pretty simple. If you're in combat, before this happens, before this red cube starts, you don't get a turn. And then during the red cube, you get your action phase, which is just combat. And otherwise, if you're not in combat during or before or after this cube, you just take an action. And it's just take an action, pass, and we all go around and take actions and pass and keep going until we have no more cubes to play, or we're also not in combat. And that's it. That's how this thing works. And as far as the creature movements, it's just when the creatures are not already in melee combat with you. If they are already in melee, if combat is happening, it's happening, and it stays happening until it is finished. And these cubes are just representations of how enemy creatures will get into combat, and also how and when enemies will fight you and you will fight them. The map cards are essentially just used to determine where you're placing certain things for each scenario. You may or may not use any or all of the map elements from the map cards. They're going to be different depending on what you're playing with and what scenario you're dealing with. In my case, we only actually had 2 tiles that start with the game, and they were pretty straightforward. Other map tiles are a little different, and it's really based on just what you draw, and that was a little confusing as well. The fact that you can only have 1 red cube ever on red, we were playing it as though you could only have 1. If you had more than 1, you got rid of them. The actual honest truth is that if you have more than 1, you lose all of them. And I believe the original rules to the game were if you could only ever have 1 in black and red. But in the new version of the rules, from what I've looked in here, it seems that you can have as many on black as you want, as long as they don't touch red, and only 1 in red, and if you have more, you lose those cubes. It's also weird to me that you place your reserve on your character, which is where I would feel your supply should go. I feel like your supply should be on your character and your reserve should be off of the board, set away, so that you can feel like you're utilizing these resources from your card. It was very confusing for me and the people on the table, like, why is it all my resources that I'm currently possessing I can't use? It's the ones that are off the game board. And I don't know why it fumbled us so much, but it did. And so having that on the character card, I think, is a better option. And having your reserves set off in like a reserved area. And then the rest can be in like a stock somewhere, like set aside or whatever, etc. But like little things like that in the rules, like, just messed with us. There's some rules to combat that are more complex. I'm not going to talk about how the creatures move and all that. There's like sound involved, and each character moves a specific way. Each enemy creature has unique little special abilities, and whether they're elites or leaders gives not only special abilities but more HP based on the number of players and more damage. The game obviously gets progressively more difficult as time goes on. But other than those kind of little things, I think we played pretty much correctly. I mean, we included an exit for some reason, even though the story just said that we're supposed to leave through the entrance, so that was our bad. A few things we just didn't read, skipped, or missed, apparently. But yeah, other than the complexity of the rules and confusion that we had throughout the game, once playing through it all yesterday and experiencing all the rules via video, understanding the game became a lot easier, and I was able to kind of give you, hopefully, a fairly good run through how the game works. I like this game. This is a cool game. I want to jump through a full scenario campaign, which I haven't done yet, so I'm not going to fully explain if I like the campaign version or not of the game. But I do know there's additional upgraded difficulty levels you can increase with. You can go from one to the next and save certain aspects of your character. But if you just want to do one-shots, you can do that as well. And each one-shot has a difficulty rating in the campaign booklet. Excellent art, high quality stuff. Overall, wish I had some miniatures to go with it, and of course the walls, which are not needed, but would be nice as well. Just little upgrades here and there. But what you get is a bunch of game in one box. You get a cool little dexterity aspect to the game that is more about conserving resources and management, more than it is about just chucking as much as you can. And each character feeling unique and different each and every time, with additional characters that I didn't even talk about, like the monk, you can choose if you'd like in a 1, 2, 3, or even 4 player game of a dungeon crawl. Throw in the trader element and a few other elements of little extra bonus aspects or like things that you might not expect in a game like this, and you've got, well, a well-rounded game, which I just wish the rules were better clearly defined. Thank you guys for watching their Unfiltered Gamer board game review for the game Temple of Horrors. If you're interested in picking up their title, I have a link down below in the description, and if I can find it, a link for the deluxe components, because with a game like this, miniatures are required in order for me to fully, really love the experience. It did come with some metal tokens though, which I didn't use for the playthrough. They're just basically coins, but those are nice, and so I think that the rest of the stuff will be nice as well, but the quality you get here is great. There's a live stream we do every Sunday at 6:30 p.m. PST, and now 7:30. Baby goes to sleep at 7, so we had to increase that up, and this last live stream, plagued with errors. Plagued with errors. We had like demons come out of the stream with audio problems and stuff. Can't fix everything, but we do play games like this. In fact, we did play this one here as a first-time gaming experience with rules that were incorrect. I explained most of them, if not all of them, in this review, so hopefully that covered everything. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hit that like button, that subscribe button. Tell us what you think about the game Temple of Horrors. This is a game you want to pick up or not. It's definitely a lengthy one, but if you're into this type of a game, you probably get kind of used to that type of experience. Overall, solid little game, and I always look forward to delving into Temples of Horror with you guys next time. It's a longer review than I thought I'd give.